Hello everyone, good morning and welcome back to Sports Today, and welcome back to the video where we bring you the happenings that have been taking place in the world of sport which you may have missed out on whilst you were catching up on some all-important sleep. We know what the world of sport like is though, never really sleeps, there's always something or the other going on, which is why we join you every day to discuss things which you may have missed out on whilst you were actually switched off from the world of sports. So without further ado, let's just quickly get down to it, and let's start by talking about two Indian players who have been pretty key in one way or another to India's retention of the Border Gavaskar Trophy, Axar and Ravindra Jadeja. Now, obviously Jadeja has been the star with the ball. He's been absolutely phenomenal with the ball, has done some good with the bat. Axar probably hasn't gotten as much of a chance to shine with the ball, but has played some crucial innings lower down the order, and the two of them were actually, they had like an interview segment of sorts with the BCCI's official website, where the two of them were interacting and talking about how things went in the Delhi test. When Axar jokingly asked Jadeja, he said, you're bowling so well in this particular series, what, do you not want me to bowl or what? And the two of them just burst out laughing at that given point in time. Now, obviously both of these boys, the Gujarat lads, they would have actually played a lot of cricket up against each other in the domestic sphere as well. They do share a good camaraderie, a good response and relationship, even though Axar is essentially competing for Jadeja with that spot when it comes down to them being picked as the single unit. So you only want one left arm spinner. Well, you're probably picking between one of these two, and most likely it's going to be Jadeja getting the nod. That being said, it was clearly in good humor and there was no malice meant. And in fact, even skipper Rohit Sharma had talked about how it was sometimes hard to pick between his bowlers because all three of them, or all three of the spinners at least, were consistently wanting to have a bowl. Now, speaking to cricket news, Australia coach Andrew McDonald has actually come out and made a pretty frank admission as to the fact that the Australians have not actually been sticking to their plans when it comes to taking on the Indian spinners. He was speaking to media people before the team's departure from New Delhi, and he did say that whilst we did have certain plans that we had laid, we did end up departing from those plans, and due to that we actually ended up struggling a lot. Now, it's a pretty brutally honest admission, but it does actually make some sense, because it doesn't make too much sense that the only thing Australia had planned for taking on India's spinners was to go for cross-patted sweep shots, whether it be of the standard variant or the reverse variant, whichever way you're looking at it. That wasn't the only major thing that their plans were. He said that we had other plans, but we ended up departing from them. We panicked and we let the Indian spinners get on top of us. Now, sticking to the Border Gavaskar Trophy, and there's been some rather interesting criticism coming off Australia from across the Indian border. In fact, former PCB chairman Ramiz Raja, who you'd remember had been ousted from his post and has done what a lot of former Pakistan players have done and started a YouTube channel of his own, has in fact poked some fun at the fact that Australia are struggling so badly on what he called tailor-made wickets. And in fact, he didn't even mean it as a jibe towards the Indians. He said that, for years the Australians would make these tailor-made wickets in Australia and you'd have Asian teams go there and struggle. Now what's happening is that the tables have turned, because they're coming here and they're absolutely unable to play the Indian conditions, the Indian bowlers, you name it, they're struggling with everything. So he was actually poking a lot of fun at the fact that Australia have struggled as much as they have in this particular series, and it's a valid point to be made, because even if you didn't expect Australia to maybe win the series, you were expecting that they would at least show some fight. Sadly, that hasn't happened so far in the series at all. Now, speaking of teams that did show some fight, the Indian women's cricket team sealed their spot in the semi-finals of the T20 World Cup that's currently ongoing. They beat Ireland, even though by not the massivest of margins, but still, they got the job done. They're through to the semis and they will be taking on Australia in the semi-finals. And skipper Harmanpreet Kaur actually did point out one particular cause of concern for the team going into that semi-final, and that cause for concern was the fact that they ended up playing one too many dot balls. She said that the dot balls is something that we need to be working on. There were too many of those against England, so we need to get better at not just rotating the strike but also sporadically finding the boundary to ensure that scoreboard pressure isn't a thing. And against the Australian team, if the Indians are playing dot balls, then obviously God help them, because this Australian team are very much the favourites to lift the trophy and to continue their reign as white ball kings or queens in this case of the world. India will have their task at ahead, but if they take their skipper's advice to heart, they might just be able to put up some sort of fight, and who knows, maybe even upset the Australians going forward. Now, switching our focus from the world of cricket to the world of football, Liverpool owner John Henry has come out very clearly and said that, look, Liverpool are not for sale. We're not looking to sell the club. Now, there had been a lot of rumors circulating in the fact that FSG, Fenway Sports Group, the investment group that John Henry is a part of, were keen to actually sell Liverpool off and get a big fee for them. But he's now come out in a public interview and said, no, that's not the case at all. We're just looking for new investment into the club. So we want to sell off at best minority stakes. We don't intend selling the club. That being said, he did say that I don't intend remaining in England forever either. So maybe the club will be sold off in the future, but as of now, that doesn't seem to be the stance that, John Henry and FSG are looking to make. They're not looking to sell the club. They're just looking for additional investment from other quarters. Speaking of, things or football-related matters that require extra, say, funding, the English League Cup, which is known as the Carabao Cup for sponsorship reasons, is open to actually revamping the tournament if it means, getting more money from the Premier League. Now, currently, the Football League, the Premier League, they host this cup in conjunction, and there is obviously a lot of popularity of the cup still, because there are a lot of teams that do want to obviously win a trophy. That goes without saying. But right now there is talk that you could be having more UEFA Champions League fixtures played at the time when this tournament is being played, so you might see some big clubs lose out on interest. So there is talk to revamp the tournament, and that could also mean stuff like increasing the prize pool that Premier League clubs give to the EFL, or better yet, removing the two-legged semi-final that's currently a norm for the Carabao Cup. They're saying that all options are open, but we want the cup to keep carrying on because there is still very much an appetite for this particular tournament. And we'll end the news update with some news from that pertains to the Olympics. Now, you remember that there's been about a year now that Russia have started or an invasion or a war in Ukraine, and since that time Russia has found itself very isolated on the world stage, especially when it comes to sports, where Russian athletes and even Belarusian athletes have either been outright banned or their participation for major tournaments has been limited, and it has to be done so under a neutral flag. Now, the International Olympic Association had made clear that there would be no major participation of Russian or Belarusian athletes, but there seems to be a softening of that stance because the IOC is keen to actually bring in these athletes into the qualifying rounds and ensure that they compete under a neutral flag. However, over 30 countries, including the likes of UK and France, have actually written to the IOC and said, look, there shouldn't be any kind of participation allowed as long as the war in Ukraine is still very much going on. How that plays out remains to be seen, but it could become just a little bit of a headache for the IOC going forward. And that's it from us on this latest edition of the Morning Update with Sports Today. Thank you guys so much for joining us and making sure that we can bring you these, have these conversations, interactions with you on a daily basis. If you enjoy our work, please don't forget to like the video, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel, tap that bell icon, leave us a comment. Also, don't forget to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and download the SportsTech app as well. You'll get all of these breaking news updates at the tip of your fingers. Thanks once again for joining us. If you're already on the channel, please go ahead and check out some other videos that we may have done. For now though, from my side, goodbye.